Good morning, and hello, can you hear me? Hello? Yeah, I have this now. Good morning. Uh, my name is Tim Schilling, and I work for World Coffee Research. I'd like to thank, first of all, the organizers here at SINTER Cafe. Done such an excellent job of bringing so many people in coffee, in the coffee sector together. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the WCR, the World Coffee Research Program, and what we're doing to help sustain the quality supplies of coffee in a very precarious time. To kind of frame, you hear about sustainability. There's a lot of different definitions of it, and I just want to make sure that we're clear on what we're going to be talking about here in terms of sustainability, and it's about the supply chain. First of all, we all know that there's a lot of new players in the coffee market, and there is a strong and growing demand for coffees, and a strong and even more, a stronger and even more growing demand for quality coffees. Yet, there are still many basic supply side challenges that will and are posing significant problems in the supply chain. Notably, climate change and genetic constriction. The constriction of the gene base of the Arabica coffee species. And I'll get more into that later. And finally, this whole thing is underpinned by a very small amount of research to address these problems. In other words, the toolbox that the coffee industry has to fix problems, like you see in rust and stuff like that, is very tiny. There's almost nothing in it. And just to kind of underline that point, is the fact that today, we're here with Promo Cafe in the Promo Cafe region, Central America, Caribbean, and Peru. And in those countries, there is just one coffee breeder, a person who develops coffee varieties, to change that kind of situation. That breeder is young and is here in Costa Rica at eCafe. So the whole rest of that's just an example. If you take rice or corn, wheat, the world has literally thousands of breeders making and working with those crops to adapt them and to protect them from environmental and diseases and environmental degradation and that kind of thing. In coffee, there's a handful. There might be 30, maybe 35 in the world. So you see, coffee really is basically, and the reason is that it's basically an orphan crop. It was born in Africa. It didn't have a very wealthy parents. They didn't have a time to give the coffee a good education, and or to nurture it with research activities. And so, in a way, we find ourselves with that situation today. World Coffee Research was born a couple of years ago to address just this problem. And we're basically a network of coffee research institutions and researchers and programs all around the world working to grow and protect the supplies of quality coffee while enhancing the livelihood of the growers who produce it. We're managed by the Norman Borlaug Institute for International Agriculture at Texas A&M University. And we are funded 100% by the coffee industry, many of which are in this room. That's going to be changing a little bit soon. Here are many of the companies that are currently funding World Coffee Research. Okay, what are we doing? I'm not here to lecture you, to give a big speech, complicated speech about science that we're doing and stuff like that on World Coffee Research. I do want you to know that we do have a very ambitious, dynamic, and hard-hitting agenda in our strategic plan here. And I want to point out that it's broken down into impact, to deliver impact in the short term through getting current technologies that are out there into the hands of the producers, one. And then a medium-term activities, which are the development of seed multiplication technologies, better seed, better varieties. That's the medium term, as well as the multi-location variety trial system, and I'll talk about that later. And then the motor of the engine for the program is the development of new breeding populations and varieties that have the traits and attributes to combat the threats and disease, epidemics, climate change, and this kind of thing into the future. Finally, work on the genetic resources of the Arabica coffee species. You probably know that they are rapidly degrading in Ethiopia and Kenya, and it's becoming very urgent to protect and to collect that material so that we can use it to solve problems in the future. Okay, why the emphasis, so much emphasis on genetics? Well, first of all, it's a proven way to make rapid gains in a crop species. And it gives a very high return on investment. So many research dollars produces a lot of production or quality results in the field. It's low-hanging fruit. It's easy. There's not a lot of work that has been done in coffee. And if you look around in the other crop species, there's been a lot of work that's been done. And we are now able to utilize what has been done, those technologies, those DNA technologies, all that stuff that has been done in other crops, and now leapfrog years ahead without investing much money to the same kind of levels of performance. And we can do that without utilizing genetically modified techniques. So I just want to give a little example of just conceptually how this might look. In CIAT, which is a research center in Colombia, they have been working at trying to study the effects of climate change later on. So on your left side, the effects on production, right side, and effects on quality. So what this graph shows is, do we have a thing here? No. What this graph shows is that on the far left is where the situation is. That yellow part in Nicaragua is where coffee grows well. And that's today. In 2050, this is where coffee will be suitable to grow in Nicaragua, Arabica coffee. So that's about 50% reduction in the area that can actually produce a fine Arabica coffee. And what about quality? Well, quality is the same kind of thing. Here we have Veracruz in Mexico. Same kind of situation. On the left of that slide, on your right, you see the large red area showing the high suitability for fine coffees with a very fruity and nice acidity that is sought after by the industry. And in 2050, how that has diminished by over 50%, largely due to climate change. First, what goes on really in the plant? First of all, when you get the average temperature and it goes above 23 degrees, in terms of quality, you get a rapid filling of the cherry that's on the plant. And it takes that results in less time to accumulate the volatile compounds that produce the flavors in your coffee. There's lower density, and you know that density is correlated with quality, and lower acidity and flavor attributes as a result. On the production side, what happens after you get up to 23 degrees on an average temperature is a lot of flower abortion. There's cherry drop. Obviously, there's higher insect and disease pressures. And basically, the system becomes overloaded, resulting in the kind of results that are predicted for later on, like in 2030 up to 2050. So how can we fix, the climate problem? There's, one lot of activity going on fixing it with the environment, which is represented here by an air conditioner. And meaning that if we cool the planet or the field somehow, you don't have those problems occurring. That's a tough one. We really don't have a whole lot of control. We have a panel on climate change and all that kind of thing in the United Nations, but things aren't happening very well. Every year you read that the sea levels are going up, the temperatures are going up as well, and it's a problem. The other thing you can do is genetics. You can change the genetics of the plant so that the plant adapts itself better to those increased temperatures, because all those traits, all those systems, all those metabolisms that we were just talking about in the other slide are controlled by genes. The other key constraint is what I mentioned earlier, genetic constriction, okay? And genetic diversity, you've got to have genetic diversity to make changes, all right? And unfortunately, in coffee, we just don't have it. It's not there. All the varieties that are used today in the world can be traced back to just a handful of progenitors or parents. That's a bad situation, because they're all related. And it means you can't work yourself out of a box. So we're in that box. You can't, at some point, you hit the limit, and after that, there's no more variability genetic to capitalize on or to move. This is the problem that has been going on in the world for a long time. If you look back, we have the Irish potato famine in the 1850s. It's a blight, potato blight. Millions of people starved to death. Why? Because the potato varieties they were growing came from the same seed source. The French wine blight, same thing, also around 1850, 1860. And it's interesting to look at these photos from 1850 because the phylloxera organism that's responsible for the blight was an organism that was also a wine connoisseur. And that organism was selected out, the better wine vines in France to attack. So not only did France lose major areas of wine production, but they also lost the best ones, creating a huge catastrophe in France. Finally, just recently, in the 90s, the agave sector in Mexico was hit by another bacteria, and prices shot up. There was very little tequila on the market, causing a lot of problems in some areas. And the reason, once again, is because they all planted the same variety. So they didn't have any genetic variability. There was no different kind of varieties out there. The resistance for all those things exists in those germplasm sources from their ancestors. They exist, but they just were not utilized. So we don't want a situation like that in coffee, but we got one. And everybody knows this is the big subject here, the coffee leaf rust. And it's a big problem, and it's an expensive problem. Promo Cafe has assembled the data that you see on this table, showing just one thing that I want to point out here. The expense, look at that, it's over $500 million per year to spray and to renovate plantations with new varieties with resistance. Okay, $500 million. And that doesn't include the labor and stuff like that, just the fixed costs to do that. It's crazy. The point that we're trying to make here is that, this is not the first time. This is about the fourth time it's happened here in Central America. It's happened just recently in Colombia. And with climate change, it's going to happen more. But the thing is, it doesn't have to happen. It doesn't have to happen. There are things we can do that were never done to prevent it. And that goes back to the paucity or the lack of research, of coffee research programs in Central America. So a lot of this is about building the capacity. And what are we actually doing now? I mean, this is I think the key thing that I'd like to talk about now is what WCR and others are doing. We have been working with Promo Cafe hand in hand. We put together Emergency Coffee Rust Summit in Guatemala. We assembled the entire supply chain. It went well. We identified the different strategies to take for short, medium, and longer term interventions to control and prevent rust from occurring. Then we started talking to the U.S. I shouldn't say just not just U.S. coffee industry, but the coffee industry, the global coffee industry, and the U.S. Agency for International Development. And we started to put together a project that will address many of the problems that I just talked about. So we have, USAID has agreed to match every dollar of private money from a private roasting company, or from an export company, or from a trading company, or a manufacturing company, or even a consumer for that matter, with $1 of U.S. money to apply to this program to control and prevent coffee leaf rust in Central America, Peru, and the Caribbean through agricultural research. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing there. First, who is supporting? I mean, I like this slide because it kind of shows these are the companies that are today involved, that have agreed to be involved in this. The actual program is not completely, we're still discussing, we're still partnering with USAID. It's not money in hand yet, but it looks very, very likely to be starting up very soon. But these are the companies that have come together to give over $500,000 per year that will be matched by USAID, $500,000 a year for this program. So what are we going to really be doing? The first area is variety intelligence, which is really a producer decision tool. A producer is out there, he has to figure out when he has a disease like this. Obviously, he sprays if he has that ability. But at some point, he's got to ask himself, wow, it's costing money every time when I get a disease, So I want to renovate my plantation, or maybe it's time to renovate anyway. But how does that farmer actually choose the best variety for his particular or her particular situation? If they're in the Guatemalan highlands, for example, it's not like all varieties are made equal. So there are different resistances built in. The idea here is to do a survey of all the current varieties being utilized, and to make a catalog with all of the different attributes of those varieties. How does it perform at altitude? Is it resistant to nematodes? Where can I get the seed? What are its quality attributes? Can I expect to have that kind of quality and sell my coffee on the same market that I sold before? Those are the questions the farmer is asking, and this part of the project is to address that and to answer those questions. And this happens fast. We should have something out probably within 6 months of this kind of thing. We're also working with the Specialty Coffee Association of America and the Roasters Guild, who will actually conduct cupping tests on these varieties in a scientifically controlled experience. So for the first time, we will be able to answer that question. Well, don't these rust-resistant varieties, aren't they of poorer quality? And this is a big part for the farmer. So that also will be answered through that component. Another area is that of seed and seedling multiplication support. We have a program designed. I'm not going to go in a whole lot to the science, but it's mainly, you know, that there are tissue culture. You know, there's F1 hybrids from Ecom, for example, and also from the Proma Cafe, E-Cafe work, and that are very promising, for example, but can only be multiplied through tissue culture, somatic embryogenesis. And there's only one lab actually that's able to do that, and they're not actually able to produce as much material as needed. So the idea here is that first to work to identify those tissue culture labs. There's other tissue culture labs in Central America that are multiplying bananas and pineapple and ornamental plants. Those tissue culture laboratories can easily shift over and also start to do coffee, but they have to know how to do it. So the idea here is to transfer the technology to labs that are already doing this in other crops so that we can increase the supply of seedling material for plantation renovation. And the next one is the micro cutting support. You know, in Cartier, we were just out there the other day, and there's a Dr. Francisco Meisen, and he has perfected a technique to commercially upscale a somatic embryogenesis produced plant that is actually a current bottleneck. So we are going to support this activity because this is another way to provide adequate volumes of the resistant material, high-performing resistant material, to the producer. Finally, in working with Proma Cafe and the coffee institutes like E-Cafe and Ana Cafe and IASH Cafe, a program of coffee seed certification. You know what? Because this is the classic way. A farmer will, generally, well, I'm going to renovate my plantation. I'm going to go ask the farmer over there. His field looked good. I'm going to ask to buy a sack of that seed from him and plant it on my farm next year. That's generally the way things go. Well, not everybody is growing what they think they're growing, first of all. And there's a process to ensure that when a farmer buys seed from another farmer, that indeed he's getting the best quality material. And this is called seed certification. So the idea is to work with the actors in the coffee institutes, like I said, and train individuals that would certify the fields of certain farmers that have that kind of potential, so that a farmer in need of a certain variety can be assured that if they go to this field, this farmer that's certified, he will indeed get that particular resistant variety. And just recently working with C-Rod actually on this, there's also a way using kind of like, if you will, DNA fingerprinting to quickly determine whether or not that farmer is indeed growing Catimor or Sashimor or Central America, whatever it is. So this would be part of the plan, so that there's no guesswork involved. So that's the second component. The third is assisting the Promo Cafe institutions to put together a regional program in variety improvement. And that's through putting into place variety trials, a rust breeding program, or I should say a disease breeding program, that allows you to constantly produce high-performing, rust-resistant, and other disease-resistant, high-quality material. And then something I won't go into is called genomic selection, but it's very, very important and very, very innovative. At another time, we'll talk about it. But it basically allows us to go and solve the problem of genetic diversity, this constriction. Genomic selection will allow us to leapfrog over or break that barrier of gene constriction. I won't talk about how we're doing it right now. But I did want to show you that we are on, right now, we have selected with Promo Cafe the 30 best performing varieties in the world. I mean, they're coming from Indonesia, they're coming from Brazil, they're coming from Colombia, they're coming from Kenya. And those varieties are now being multiplied in sterile conditions so that they can enter your country with no phytosanitary or few. If the yield gains and the quality gains merit swapping out their variety with a new one. So this is the low-hanging fruit I'm talking about. Whoops. Another part, and I got to quickly go through this, but is the best agronomic practices. Yep, okay. The same kind of thing here. So, there's all kinds of information out there. What are you going to do to control rust? Okay, we know you can spray the fungicide, but if you're not doing that, what do you do agronomically? A lot of people say put it under shade. Manage your shade like this. Make a formula of stuff, from the farm and this and that and spray it on your plants. Fertilize here. Don't do it here. Use this chemical. There's a lot of people saying a lot of things. And the idea of this program is first and foremost to provide some sort of risk mitigation for the farmer by saying, hey, look, this is what we really do know that you can do to control rust on farms, okay? But this other thing, we don't know about it. And the stuff that we don't know about that looks promising, we do research on it to figure it out. And then we can tell the farmer to do it or not do it. So that's this part of the program. This will be the last thing, but another area, a lot of people are organic coffee farmers. And there's rust is a big problem with them because they can't use fungicides on it. So there's we're working with the University of Viçosa and Cabia International to put together a program on biocontrol research. And just quickly, just to explain this kind of bizarre photo, is kind of explains how it works. The movie star in the photo is actually the Arabica coffee plant. And the photographers and they are like the rust organism trying to get her. And she has with her what's known as a little bodyguard. And he's protecting her from being hassled by these reporters. And it's the same, which explains perfectly well how it works in the biocontrol research program. Because basically, the idea is to find these little bodyguards in the coffee forest of Ethiopia and Kenya, and because what happened was these bodyguards, they co-evolved with the species 10,000 years ago. So they're still all over there, they're over there, but when we started moving the coffee from Ethiopia to here, we didn't move the bodyguards, we just moved the plant. So we have to go back and figure out where the bodyguards are, to get them, to evaluate them, and then test them to see if they can actually do the job we want. And there's a lot of promise. I mean, we wouldn't do this if we weren't kind of pretty sure that it was going to yield some results. So that's the biocontrol part. And this is almost ending on time. another big part of this is trying to build capacity in Central America for coffee research. So all these programs that we're doing also by identifying Central American candidates for PhDs in these 4 areas: coffee agricultural economics, pathology, coffee breeding, which is the more applied side, and then coffee genetics, which is more the molecular side. So through this time, we'll be working with the institutions at conducting the research, but with the also building the capacity through these students. We also have a program at the level of Proma Cafe to help with strengthening their ability to produce policy analysis from data. You know, I don't know if those of you who did come to the Guatemala Rust Summit in April, you'll remember that it was an incredible thing to see that we had so little data from the different countries to know what exactly was going on, where it was going on, and all that. That it was very clear that if we were going to do a program on rust prevention and control, that we would do it. With this had to be done as well. So finally, how do you? Okay, this is a 4-year project. All right, so it would start in January of 2014. And you might ask, well, how do you keep it going? You know, how do you, so what? 4 years, can you really do that much? Well, yes, you can. And it's very important, that you have to realize that you just can't do it alone, because actually governments, including our own government in the United States, generally we're pretty much broke. There's not a lot of money for this kind of thing. There's even less money in the Central American governments. Producers have difficulty buying anything, including food. And, so it looks like it's the industry is going to have to step up, I think, and that's what we see happening. Industry is starting to realize that this is a way forward if we're going to protect the supplies of quality coffee. And at the end of the day, the project will stop at the end of 2018. However, the research programs will go on with Proma Cafe and WCR, who stays. So that's what I wanted to tell you. I thank you for your attention, and look forward to seeing you.